G'day legends, TJC Sports here, welcome back to another legendary NRL Round predictions video here. Been a little bit since we've done one of these. Sorry legends, been such a busy year. But we are back finally for round 11 here. If you enjoy, remember to hit that like button and subscribe as always if you're new. And as we always say, keep in mind that at the end of the day, these are just my opinions and not fact. This is just a random Parramatta fan giving his predictions. And it's all, at the end of the day, completely luck-based. Feel free to let me know in the comments down below your tips, and let's get on with it. We open up the round with the Dylan Brown Cup. Newcastle Knights versus the Parramatta Eels here. Will the Eels be able to show the Newcastle Knights exactly what they paid for Dylan Brown, or do much better? We will see, legends. Obviously, as an Eels supporter, I do have a bias in this one. We all know who I'll want to win it. Lomax returns to the side, and you know what that means. It's our first game with Momax, baby. Gonna be legendary. I'll be vlogging every second of this one. Cannot wait for it. Tomorrow cannot come soon enough. Shout out to young Tony Matele as well, who makes his debut for the Parramatta Eels. Heard great raps around him. Hopefully he gets the job done coming off the bench there. Look, I'm not going to deny, I admitted it earlier, there is some bias. But, especially after seeing Knights blow a 20-point lead last week against the Titans, I am confident the Eels can just about get the job done here. It might be scrappy, who knows, but I'm going to say that the Parramatta Eels win this 1-12. Then we finish off our Friday footy with the Bulldogs versus the Sydney Roosters here. Bulldogs coming off an epic win over the Canberra Raiders. Not bad for a weak-gutted dog. As for the Roosters, they beat the bye. Or, I guess, technically, they beat the Dolphins the week before. But who really cares about the week before, right, when tipping? I would have some concerns as a Bulldogs fan if they open up their game versus the Roosters, how they did versus the Raiders. However, that second half just showed that this is a team that never gives up. And I think the Bulldogs are going to give a real fight to the Roosters here. And as much as I would love to see the Roosters win this as an Eels fan, I'm going to have to go with the Dogs here, 1-12 legends. Please prove me wrong, Roosters. Now it's time for Super Saturday, Dolphins versus the Wars here. Absolutely love both these teams for my own reasons, respectively. Though I must admit, Mr. Herbie Farnworth on the screen here challenged that last week with his milking. This is going to be a great game here. Obviously, the Dolphins haven't played their best in some past games, but they do seem to show up at home, so I can only see this game being 1-12. A huge gym for the Warriors. Fisher Harris comes back, and RTS is named in the reserves, so there's every chance he comes back too, though those aren't guaranteed. With those, Warriors should be able to put up a good fight here. After that, it comes down to who you feel is going to win deep down. And for me, I'm going to have to say, and I'm sorry to my Wars viewers, the Dolphins 1-12 here. I think the Warriors could easily win this one possibly, but based on how the Dolphins have performed at home the last few times, I'm going to have to go with Dolphins here. On to our middle game of Super Saturday here. It is the draw-prone Cowboys versus the Manly Warringah Seagulls. Personally, right now, I think the Cowboys are in better form as it stands. However, Manly are a team where when Cherry can get firing at his best, can beat anyone on their day, I reckon, here. Obviously, last week wasn't Cherry's best game or Manly's best game, as Cronulla Sharks in the end won quite well. Cowboys, though, they'll be pumped after fighting so hard against Panthers, and I think they'll be hungry to actually get 2 points in a game here. I think this one could go either way here, but I think the Cowboys will win. And I think the Cowboys will win with the home advantage, 1-12. Speaking of the Sharks, here they are to face the Storm to finish off Super Saturday here. Obviously, both coming off what in the end was dominant victories. Cronulla Sharks scoring, I think it was 30 points or more against Manly. And Melbourne Storm scoring 60. Oh my God, I still can't believe that scoreline to look at. Melbourne Storm could not be coming off a better victory than that one over the Tigers. If both teams perform to their best, we should be in for a cracker of a game to finish off our Super Saturday. Credit where it's due to the Sharks. They didn't fall into the traps last week that they had of the past. Obviously, Manly did manage to come back. However, Cronulla Sharks just kept on fighting. They got the job done, and they got the job done well. Can they do that against the Storm, though? That's an entirely different question. I feel like the Storm there's not many tougher teams you could face this year. If there is any tougher teams, probably the Bulldogs, I guess, of tougher sides. I do think that at least for a portion of this game it'll be tight, but I'm going to go with a low 13-plus victory to the Storm here. I think Cronulla will fight harder than people think, but I still think that just about Storm will get a 13-plus victory here. To open up our Sunday footy, it is what would have been the Ben Hunt reunion if he were playing the Broncos versus the Dragons here. Forget about that, though. The real story of this game is the return of Ezra Mam. It'll be interesting to see how the crowd reacts to him. It'll probably be very mixed. Broncos don't typically perform well in day games, so this could be a bit of a trap one for everybody. This game does kind of scream trap that ruins everyone's tips. However, I just can't look past the Broncos here at Suncorp, especially with how the two teams are. Yes, the Broncos can be a bit inconsistent against poor teams, and that loss to South wasn't a great performance by them in the second half. But I just can't look past them. So, Brisbane Broncos to win 1-12. Could be 13+, but I'll say 1-12. Then we have two teams for our middle Sunday game. That's right, middle Sunday game. There are three from completely opposite ends of the spectrum here. Top 4 Raiders versus bottom 4 Titans. Titans, though, despite being the bottom 4 team, coming off a 20-point comeback, and the Raiders coming off a 20-point loss of a comeback here. Exact opposite rounds last week here. This should be an interesting one. Matty Nicholson is out of the Raiders team with injury, whilst Kieran Foran comes back for the Titans in a 14 role for them. Before I say my tip, I just want to say that, yes, as I mentioned earlier, I did watch last week's games. A 20-point comeback is terrific, Titans. However, the Knights were also just that poor after that 20-point lead. Nothing takes away how good of a comeback it was, though. However, I just can't look past the Raiders with that Titans performance. The Raiders have been a solid team this year, and I reckon that they'll get the job done. I think it'll be a low 13+, but I am back in the milk in this one. Though it would be classic faders for them to lose this. Finishing off the round, it is West Tigers versus the South Sydney Rabbitohs. And look, I don't even want to go into the Tigers' game last week. It was just horrific. I think enough people have dug into the Tigers. I'm just going to let that score sit there on the screen. That's all I got to say about it versus the Storm. And the South Sydney Rabbitohs coming off a game where Latrell Mitchell looks like he may have played himself into a Blues jumper, which terrifies me as a Queensland fan. South Sydney Rabbitoh legend AJ returning for them. And he'll probably score knowing how he is. However, the West Tigers, they'll be looking to bounce back after last week and will probably put up a big fight in this one. South Sydney Rabbitohs showed, though, that despite that, even if a team goes well against them, Bunnies have the ability to fight back. And if Latrell performs even half as good as he did last week, I'd be a little worried if I was the Tigers. I expect Tigers to lead at points in this game. However, I think the Bunnies will just about get the job done here in a scrappy 1-12 victory.